Welcome to Legendary Sleep. Tonight, we journey to the golden sands and sacred temples of ancient Egypt, where the blazing sun was more than just a light in the sky. It was a god, a force of creation, a symbol of unyielding vigilance. We follow Ra, the great sun god, as he rides his solar bark across sky and underworld, through conflict and rebirth, watched always by his powerful eye. From the chaos of primordial waters to the celestial heights of divine kingship, Ra's tale is woven with battles, transformations, divine beings like Sekhmet, Hathor and Apep, and the timeless cycle of life and death. A story both vast and intimate, filled with wisdom, mystery, and quiet power. If you enjoy this story, you're welcome to like and subscribe. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Let me know in the comments. Chapter 1. The First Light. In the beginning, there was no land, no sun, no sky, only the dark, endless waters of none. No breath, no voice, only the quiet pulse of potential. These waters stretched into infinity without edge or shore, timeless and silent. From these sacred depths rose a mound, the Benben, glistening under a newborn light. This primordial hill, shimmering with potential, marked the very first ground, earth born from chaos. And from this sacred stone, Ra emerged, alone, radiant, self-created, the first god. Ra needed no mother or father. He brought himself into being with sheer divine will. His golden form shimmered with the power of creation. His breath formed the air. His tears gave birth to humanity. With a single thought, he shaped Shu, god of air, and Tefnut, goddess of moisture. From their union came Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. The world was unfolding, layer by layer, under Ra's watchful light. But creation was not merely a grand act. It was personal. Ra was not a distant god overseeing the cosmos from afar. He walked among his creations, shaping rivers with his fingers, stirring clouds with his breath, and laughing at the antics of animals he brought to life. He explored the lands he formed, basked in the sounds of waves and winds, and marveled at the harmony of the world. Ra ruled from his temple in Heliopolis, a place of sacred energy, where the obelisks pointed like golden fingers to the sun. There, surrounded by other gods and wise priests, he offered not only leadership, but light, wisdom, and warmth. He became king of gods and men, father of all. Yet as Ra created, time continued its slow, inevitable march. The world grew more complex. The boundaries of chaos stretched ever closer, and deep beneath the surface, something ancient stirred. The waters of none had not vanished. They remained beneath and around, ever present, and from their hidden depths, shadows moved in the corners of the light. Chapter 2. The journey begins. Each morning, Ra stepped into his solar boat and began his journey across the sky. The boat gleamed with precious metals carved by divine artisans. With him sailed gods who protected and guided him. Seer, god of perception. Hu, god of divine utterance and command. And Maat, the goddess of truth, balance, and cosmic order. From the eastern horizon, his bark lifted, casting golden rays upon pyramids, temples, deserts, and rivers. As Ra glided through the heavens, he watched over all creation, nourishing crops, awakening birds, and bringing clarity to the waking world. The sun's passage was not just light, it was presence, guidance, assurance. Yet Ra's journey was only half visible to mortals. At dusk, the sun dipped into the western horizon, and the visible world darkened. But this was not the end. It was the beginning of Ra's second, more perilous voyage. In the realm of night, Ra entered the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. Here, his boat transformed. No longer a vessel of warmth, it became a chariot of protection, forged for battle and endurance. The Duat was no simple underworld. It was vast and mysterious, filled with gates, guardians and trials. Mountains of flame, rivers of blood, fields of stars. Ghosts and gods, demons and spirits all dwelled here. At the heart of this realm waited Apep. Apep, the chaos serpent, coiled and vast, was born from unmaking, a force not of evil, but of undoing. Each night, Apep attempted to halt the boat's journey, to devour the sun and plunge the world into eternal night. His roars shook the stars. His coils blotted out entire chambers of the Duat. But Ra, even as he aged, faced Apep with unwavering strength. Armed with spears of fire and guided by ancient spells, he stood firm. Gods like Set, the protector of Ra's bark, wielded weapons and magic to drive the serpent back. This nightly battle was not merely legend. It was sacred ritual. Priests on earth recited hymns, performed rites, and burned images of serpents to aid Ra's journey. Their chants echoed in the temples while Egypt slept. And each morning, as the first light kissed the Nile, the people rejoiced. Ra had won. The sun had risen. But with each passing night, the battle grew harder. The weariness of ages crept upon him. Ra, ever faithful, began to feel the weight of time. And in this growing shadow, the eye began to stir. Chapter 3. The Eye Awakens. Though the world still basked in sunlight, something subtle had changed in the hearts of humankind. The warmth of Ra's rays no longer filled them with gratitude, but with pride and complacency. Villages grew into cities, and cities into kingdoms. Walls were raised not to honor the gods, but to boast of mortal might. Statues bore not the image of Ra, but the likenesses of kings. Grain was hoarded, temples neglected, truth bent into convenience. Ra, ever watchful, saw it all. From his solar bark, he gazed down with ancient eyes and felt an ache stir deep within his divine spirit. He had shaped the world with care, guided it with love, but now the world looked away. The balance of Ma'at had begun to tremble. The gods convened in the sacred court, beneath the golden pillars of the Sun Temple. Shu, Tefnut, Geb, and Nut all gathered, their voices hushed with concern. Isis, the wise and cunning, was the first to speak openly. "They forget," she said softly. "They take the breath we gave them and use it to speak lies. They twist the order, hoarding power, and mocking the balance we were meant to uphold." Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, nodded solemnly. "Without Ma'at, the world unravels, and if they no longer revere Ra, what becomes of the sun's passage?" Ra sat in silence, ancient and weary. He remembered the time when people sang at dawn, when they built altars from river clay and danced by torchlight in his honor. Now their prayers had faded into murmurs, their offerings thin and thoughtless. "I gave them life," he said at last, "but their hearts are turning cold. I must act. I must remind them." Yet even Ra, mighty as he was, could feel the limitations brought on by countless millennia. He no longer walked the earth as easily as before. His steps, once sure, now echoed with fatigue, but within him burned a deeper power. a fragment of his soul so fierce, so radiant, that it could never fade. This was the eye, not merely a gaze, but a divine force, a living embodiment of Ra's will. Sometimes it took the form of a lioness, sometimes a blazing disc, sometimes a woman crowned with cobras and fire. It could see what Ra could not, go where he could not, act when he must remain still. Ra summoned the eye forth. The moment it opened, the winds hushed. Even the gods turned their eyes away as golden light filled the chamber. Not warm like sunlight, but searing, clear and piercing. The eye of Ra emerged in the form of Sekhmet, a lioness radiant with fire, her breath hot as the desert wind. She was beautiful and terrible, forged of divine fury. She bowed only to Ra, her creator, and waited for his word. "Go," he told her. "Remind the people. Let them remember who made the light they rise with. Let them see what the sun truly is." And so Sekhmet descended to the earth. She moved like a storm cloaked in flame. Wherever she stepped, those who had defied Ma'at felt their hearts tighten. Cities that once mocked the gods now trembled. Ra had sent not destruction for its own sake, but justice, clarity as fierce as fire. The people fled before her. Fields turned to ash beneath her gaze. The Nile, once gentle and nurturing, withdrew slightly from her fury. The gods above watched in stillness, for this was no punishment born of cruelty, but of balance demanding to be restored. But Sekhmet's nature was not easily reined. The eye did not distinguish between rebellion and regret. She was the fury of Ra, and she burned without pause. Ra watched from his throne and felt a pang of sorrow. He had hoped to correct, not destroy. He had hoped they would remember. But fear was a blunt teacher, and the lesson was turning too harsh. He needed to calm the eye, to soothe the fire he had awakened. Ra turned to Thoth, the god of wisdom and words, and whispered a plan. As Sekhmet stalked the land, Thoth appeared with barrels of red-dyed beer, poured into the dry riverbeds to glimmer like blood. Sekhmet, wild with divine wrath, drank deeply, thinking it the lifeblood of the rebellious. But it was not. It was peace disguised as punishment. Slowly, her flames dimmed. Her roar softened into a purr. Her golden eyes blinked, and for the first time since her descent, she paused. She returned to Ra, not defeated, but tempered. The eye had done its task. The people remembered. They rebuilt the temples, rekindled the fires, and whispered prayers at dawn once more. Offerings returned to the altars, and the priests resumed their sacred chants. The order of Ma'at, though shaken, began to settle once more. But a lesson lingered. Even the brightest sun casts a shadow. Even the kindest god must sometimes burn. And deep within Ra, the eye remained, not angry, not vengeful, but watchful, ever ready. Chapter 4. Beneath the Dying Light. Even as Hathor's laughter returned joy to the world, a quiet unease lingered beneath the surface of Ra's soul. He had seen what his power, when unbalanced, could unleash, and though Sekhmet had transformed into a gentler form, Ra knew that the chaos she quelled would never fully disappear. The serpent Apep too still writhed in the shadows of the underworld, waiting for Ra to falter. Night approached again, as it always did, and once more Ra descended into the Duat aboard his solar bark. This time, however, he did not ride with ease. The battles with Apep had grown fiercer of late. The serpent had grown bolder, its shadow stretching longer each night. As Ra's boat glided through the twilight veil, the gates of the underworld loomed larger than before. Their hieroglyphs flickered as though the spells guarding them were weakening. The gods aboard the bark, Thoth, Maat, Set, stood more alert than usual. The balance was slipping. The 5th hour of the night arrived, the most treacherous of them all, for it marked the threshold between the past and the possible. Here the souls of kings wandered. Here the scales of judgment trembled. And it was here that Apep made his move. The water split open without warning. A deep hissing filled the void. Apep rose, not just a serpent, but a storm. His body stretched across the horizon, a darkness thick enough to suffocate. His eyes blazed with hatred, not just for Ra, but for all that existed. He lunged. Set, ever the warrior, met him mid-leap, spear in hand. The clash sent tremors through the Duat. Lightning forked across its black skies. The gods aboard the bark called out ancient spells, their voices trembling but steady. The battle was brutal, a blur of teeth, flame, and divine power. And in that chaos, Ra did something he had not done before. He closed his eyes, not in surrender, but in focus. He reached inward, not toward the eye, nor toward his usual arsenal of fire and judgment, but toward something gentler, something he had forgotten over the eons, stillness, the light that warmed, not burned, the light that guided lost travelers home. He whispered a name barely audible even to himself, a name spoken only at the dawn of time, and from the depths of his being, a new light bloomed steady, not destructive, but whole. The bark began to glow with gold, soft and deep, the kind of light that made shadows recede in peace, not in fear. Apep hesitated. The serpent reeled, not out of pain, but confusion. For what do creatures of chaos do when met not with wrath, but with calm? Set drove his spear one final time, and Apep vanished in a shimmer of broken darkness, scattered like ash on the tide. The Duat fell silent. Ra opened his eyes. The gods were watching him, not just with reverence, but with something new, understanding. Even Maat, embodiment of balance, seemed changed. She stepped closer, laying a feathered hand on Ra's shoulder. "You remembered," she said, "the first light." Ra nodded. And so, as dawn neared, the bark rose from the underworld, reborn not just in victory, but in wisdom. The people of Egypt awoke to a sunrise more golden than they had seen in years. They paused in their work. They looked to the east. They bowed their heads. Ra's gaze softened. The eye, nestled within him, pulsed gently, still watching, still ready, but at peace. Back in the heavens, the gods gathered not in worry, but in quiet celebration. The balance had been shaken, yes, but it had held, and in holding, it had deepened. Ra stood at the prow of the solar bark, the wind of dawn in his hair. Below him the Nile shimmered. Above him stars faded into soft blue, and within him the light of creation burned anew, not as a fire of wrath, but as a hearth. Something had changed, not just in the world, but in the God who watched over it. And though darkness would come again, and Apep would rise once more, Ra now knew that his power was not merely in flame and fury, but in memory, in stillness, and in light that did not need to blind to be seen. Chapter 5. Whispers in the Halls of the Gods. The night after Apep's defeat was unlike any other. Ra emerged from the Duat not triumphant, but thoughtful. The stillness he had invoked, The ancient light that soothed rather than scorched lingered within him, but it also stirred something new in the divine halls above. Uncertainty. In the celestial courts, where divine beings gathered to oversee the balance of Ma'at, whispers had begun to rise. Whispers questioning Ra's strength, his consistency, his very will to continue the eternal cycle. Thoth, wise and silent, kept to his scrolls, though his eyes watched Ra more closely than before. Isis, compassionate but sharp, noticed the subtle changes in the sun god's demeanor, a quiet pause before each word, a lingering gaze at the mortal world below. Even Horus, bold and bright, asked in private whether the throne of the sky might one day need new hands. Ra, though aware, did not speak of these murmurs. He carried on with his duties, rising with the dawn and sailing through the night. But within, he felt the toll. Eons had passed since his birth from the lotus blossom that bloomed at the dawn of time. And with every rising sun, he felt the weight of eternity. One evening, seated alone in the golden chamber at the top of the world, Ra summoned the eye. It appeared before him not as fire or beast, but as a mirror. In it, he saw not just himself, but every version of him that had ever been. Young and proud, old and weary, fierce, kind, wrathful, merciful. He asked the eye what it saw, and the eye, in a rare gesture of autonomy, blinked slowly and turned away. That gesture struck deeper than any wound from Apep. Ra began to dream again, visions he hadn't seen in millennia, dreams of the primordial waters, of Nun's embrace, of the first mound rising from chaos. But in those dreams, he was not always the creator. Sometimes he watched others bring light from the dark. Sometimes he was the shadow. Elsewhere, the people of Egypt continued their prayers, but fewer eyes looked skyward. More turned to Osiris for guidance in death, or to Isis for healing. The priest noticed it, but said nothing. Temples remained full, but Ra's altars burned lower. Ra walked among mortals in disguise, as he once had in his youth. He wandered the banks of the Nile and listened to stories of other gods. Children drew Anubis in the sand. Farmers gave thanks to Tefnut for the rains. He was still honored, but no longer needed in the same way. Back in the heavens, Ma'at visited him. She laid a single feather beside him. Balance doesn't mean permanence, she said gently. Even the sun must one day rest. Ra said nothing. And yet, even as doubt crept into divine hearts and the sun god's light dimmed in spirit, the cosmos held its breath, because the eye still watched, and far in the darkness, Apep stirred again. Chapter 6. The Burden of Kingship. Ra was more than just the sun. He was the eternal king of gods and men. His journey across the sky each day was a reminder of his power, but it was also a constant burden, a responsibility that weighed heavily on his golden shoulders. As the world flourished beneath his light, so too did the ambitions of mortals grow. Kings rose and fell, each claiming divine favor, each building monuments to their own glory. But Ra saw beyond these fragile thrones. He knew that true power was not in stone or crown, but in the balance he maintained, Ma'at. This balance was delicate, a tapestry woven from truth, justice and harmony. Without it, chaos would return, tearing apart the world as surely as Apep's serpent coils sought to devour the sun. Ra's temples became centers of worship, wisdom, and law. Priests acted as his voice on earth, interpreting his will and guiding the people. Their chants and offerings nourished the god, strengthening his resolve for the trials ahead. Yet Ra's kingship was not without solitude. Despite the splendor of his realm and the loyalty of the gods, he often felt alone at the summit of power. Immortal and eternal, he watched generations pass beneath him, mortals whose lives flickered like candles in the vast night. Even the gods sometimes questioned him. Geb, the earth, whose patience was as deep as the soil, sometimes spoke of change. Nut, the sky, wrapped in endless stars, wondered if the cycle might one day falter. And Thoth, ever wise, advised caution and careful watch. Ra's eyes, the eye of Ra, were not only a symbol of power, but also a reflection of his vigilance. It was this watchful gaze that maintained order, seeing through deceit and weakness alike. Yet even such an eye could grow weary, and Ra's burden deepened as time flowed on. But in the stillness of his throne, Ra found moments of grace. When the desert breeze whispered ancient songs, when the Nile's waters mirrored his golden face, when the stars shimmered like distant fires, he remembered why he carried the world. His journey was eternal, his duty sacred, and even as shadows threatened, Ra's light would never fade. Chapter 7. The Final Crossing. The stars shimmered like distant embers in the sky as Ra stood once more upon the prow of his solar bark, the air calm and expectant. He had crossed the Duat uncountable times, battled chaos, restored balance, brought dawn to a waiting world. But tonight, something had changed. The eye, now luminous and still, hovered beside him, not as a weapon, but as a witness. Ra turned to Thoth, who stood at the helm. "The cycle is whole," Ra said softly, "but it does not belong to me alone." The gods gathered one last time, not in council or judgment, but in reverence. Isis, with tears like polished glass. Ma'at, ever poised with her feather of truth. Even Horus stood silent, sensing the shift like wind before sunrise. "I have carried the flame," Ra continued, his voice like the hush of morning wind on temple stone. "But all things must pass. Even the sun must choose when to shine from within." There was no war, no abdication, only a release. Ra offered the fire of his essence not to one successor, but to the weave of the world itself. A part to Horus, for kingship. A part to Thoth, for wisdom. A part to Ma'at, for truth. The eye, once a fearsome force, softened and nested itself in the stars. No longer a weapon, but a light, an eternal guardian in the sky. And then Ra did what no god before him had dared. He stepped back from his throne, not into death, but into distance. He became the warmth of a new dawn, the glint on the Nile, the silence between temple prayers. The people would remember him, his journey a daily promise that life continues, that darkness is always followed by light. His story was not just one of power, but of balance, of understanding that creation is fragile, and protection is a constant task. As you lay here now, listening to this tale, imagine the warmth of Ra's light surrounding you, a gentle glow that chases away the shadows of the day, calming the restless mind. Let the steady rhythm of the sun's journey soothe your thoughts, inviting you into a peaceful rest. Remember that even when night falls, the promise of dawn is sure. And just like Ra, you carry within you a light that cannot be extinguished. Thank you for joining me on this journey through ancient skies and timeless stories. If you found comfort in this tale, I've linked another Egyptian myth about Anubis in the description below. Feel free to explore it when you're ready. Consider liking and subscribing so you never miss a journey. I'd love to hear where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you, so please leave a comment. Thank you for listening to the end of this tale. Now, rest easy, and may your dreams be filled with the gentle watch of Ra's eternal light. I wish you a legendary sleep.